Hello and welcome to yet another episode of The Defenders on Sunset TV, in which we will look at the abilities of the Indian Air Force and their role both as the defenders of the country's terrain and territory, but more importantly, as a force multiplier. As we witnessed most recently during the pandemic, the Air Force played an extremely important role in providing people whatever they could in terms of medical supplies and oxygen supplies to save thousands of lives. But even before that, the Indian Air Force has been in the news from time to time, and all of it for good reasons. During the Balakot strikes, they not only stunned Pakistan, but they also stunned the world that India had the capacity to hit at its foes if it decided to do that, and the political direction was given in that line. And previously in history, they have done a remarkable job in operations both in Sri Lanka, in the Kargil front, and in the removal of the threat to democracy in the Maldives with Operation Cactus. And finally, and most importantly, this is the 50th year when India was very, very instrumental in liberating Bangladesh from the clutches of the ruthless Pakistan Army's crackdown. And the Indian Air Force really was the force multiplier and the game changer in those operations, which was enacted with complete synergy between the three services of India's armed forces. And in the next half an hour, we'll take you through what the Indian Air Force has been able to achieve, how it achieves that, how it plans for it, and how it continues to be the guardians of India's skies. The Indian Air Force, as many of us know, has an impressive record of achievements ever since India's independence, both in operational situations and in responding to national contingencies. More recently, how they responded during the COVID pandemic by becoming really the lifeline for many from the sources of oxygen, getting them to the people who needed them desperately. And we have two experts with impressive professional records. We have Air Marshal Bhatia, who is not just a double Veer Chakra awardee, VRC and PA, but has flown virtually every type of a fighter aircraft in his service before retiring, in a unique position as AOC&C of 3 air commands. And we have Air Marshal Anil Chopra, who, after retiring from a very senior position in Air Headquarters, is now the Director General of Center for Air Power Studies. We look forward to both your wisdoms, sir. And Air Marshal Bhatia, sir, I'd like to ask you, this is the 50th year of our success in the Bangladesh liberation and the 71 war, where the Air Force quite clearly was the game changer. And thereafter, the Air Force has taken people completely by surprise with the dramatic operations that they conducted with striking at Balakot. I want you to explain, what all does the Air Force have to build into its broad sets of requirements when it plans such dramatic, daring operations? You are a Gallantry Award winner twice over. So clearly, daring and dramatic was probably natural to you. Do explain.
Yes, indeed, Maroof. This is the year, the Golden Jubilee year of 1971 war. And as we all know, it was a outstanding victory for India, and creating a new nation like Bangladesh is also known as the Liberation War, Bangladesh Liberation War. But yes, the Indian Air Force, while it spearheaded the operations in the east and helped Army achieve a blitzkrieg into Dhaka, and have the Pakistani forces surrendering within less than 2 weeks. It was in the west that it stood like a wall and did not allow the Lieutenant General Tika Khan's, that mother of all operations, to launch an offensive towards Delhi from Fazilka side. So, yes, it is a great year as far as that is concerned. Coming to your specific question on Balakot. As you know, Balakot was conceived in retaliation to the martyrdom of 40 of our CRPF personnel who died in that ghastly terrorist attack in Kashmir. So, the aim was basically to teach a lesson to these people in Pakistan to say that they cannot carry on with terrorist activities, without any punitive action. So it was actually planned as a punitive strike. But as you very rightly asked, what goes into creating that kind of a strike to go through? It is not a simple affair. It's a very, very complicated, a complex operation where a lot of things have to be put together for this kind of an operation to take place and result in success. Mind you, the actual flying is very little with the kind of speeds that the fighter aircraft have and the kind of targets that we had selected. So there were inter-bases, inter-command sort of planning, which was done. But most importantly, it was to maintain the secrecy which was required for this kind of an operation. That was also achieved. But there were people and there were aircraft which were involved, starting from AWACS to, refuelers, air refuelers, and of course the fighter aircraft which went through. And as you are aware, as many as 20 to 30 aircraft took part in this particular operation. So there were aircraft taking off from various bases in central India as well as in the western sector to come together to create that kind of environment where this strike could sneak through and do its mission and come back unscathed. And that is what happened.
Right.
So there were decoys and there were refuelers, there were early warning aircraft, and they were of course supported by ground surveillance systems, radar systems. And then there were the Mirages, which actually did the strike, precision strike on Balakot, and the results for everyone to see.
Right. So, I mean, exactly, you've led me on to the question I have for Air Marshal Chopra. Sir, you were one of the pioneers in terms of the usage of Mirage in the IAF. So you are an old Mirage hand. And I'm told, I'm a foot soldier, but I'm told that many IAF officers have expressed for years great deal of comfort with the Mirage 2000, the 2000-5, and of course now, therefore, the Rafale was an extension of that belief in the ability of French equipment to deliver. Now, what would you say that the pilots would have taken into consideration? Because I am told for the Balakot strikes, till the very end, very few people knew when and where they are going to go and strike. Or is it something that there is more hype attached to what really happened?
No, Maroof, let me briefly mention that immediately after the Second World War, the world realized that one who controls air and space controls this planet. And being an army man, I must say that the Field Marshal Montgomery said that if you do not have air supremacy, you do not only lose the ground battle, you lose it very quickly. So with this background, the air power has become dominant world over. The armies and the navies are investing more and more money in air assets because the action, three-dimensional action is in the air. The Air Marshal has already covered about the Balakot planning, but I must add a few points on Balakot planning itself. See the timing of the Balakot strike. The National War Memorial was being inaugurated. At 5 o'clock, some of us senior people were there at the memorial. The entire strategic establishment, the Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, the NSA, the service chiefs, everybody was present. It was thunder showers that day. And that night, there was to be a strike. And nobody in the world would have thought such a timing would have been thought. Next is the physical timing of the strike. The strike took off at 2:30 at night. This is called the graveyard shift time. That's the time where human beings, whether the radar controllers, whether the air defense people, are at their lowest peak. It's the security guards in your societies are also at the low. So the timing was fantastic. As Air Marshal mentioned, the intelligence part was beautifully handled. Mind you, to prepare 12 aeroplanes, 12 Mirages were to be prepared, in addition to a large number of other support systems that had to be prepared. These aircraft have to be armed. The weapons like spies, some air defense missiles that the Mirage would have carried are not the kind of weapons which can just be pulled out and slapped on. There are a lot of technical tests to be carried out. Some of these tests take a few hours to prepare. So the aircraft preparation and weapon loading would have started close to 12 hours before. Large number of technicians would have been involved. Yet nobody came to know that such a strike is going to go through. Mirage as a platform has been a weapon system of choice in Kargil. You saw that it was a game changer, laser bomb attacks, Tiger Hill, Mantod Halo, a phenomenal amount of work the Mirage fleet has done. And now Mirage was chosen as a weapon of choice. One, of course, is because Mirage had the weapons which glide bombs like the Spice 2000. Spice 2000 expensive weapon, close to $3 lakh. And with that cost, nobody designed such weapons which will not be accurate. The accuracy is less than 3 meters. So that's a fairly accurate weapon. And later on, some narrative that the ISPR, these people in Pakistan, DG, was trying to say that the targets wanted. Nobody is going to invest in such an expensive weapon with such high accuracy, which has got various modes of, navigation. It is GPS, it's got, laser, it has got various other means of, accuracy. So therefore, the Mirage has proved again and again. Back in 2001, the Indian Air Force had told the government, please give us more Mirages. But then that whole process kept getting delayed, and finally,
the acquisition process is another story.
And we are so proud. Just yesterday I was at the Rafale base and got to see how quickly the Rafale aircraft has been made operational. It's been flying in eastern Ladakh within a few days of its arrival.
Yes.
That's the kind of...
Yes. No, very well brought out. But my immediate response is to Pakistani lies. As one American author and analyst once said, that the Pakistanis lie so much that you don't believe them even when they're telling you the truth. And the second thing about them is why I believe that this operation was carried out and did achieve its aim, because otherwise Masood Azhar's brother would not have given a telephone interview to say that we have been hit. 2, Imran Khan, who normally now specializes in wearing shalwar kurta and a Nehru jacket, was there sitting for a briefing with his senior military officers and other diplomats and bureaucrats in what he would probably be wearing on a winter evening, a round neck with a leather jacket and what have you. And third, why did Pakistan think it important to suddenly rush the F-16s to try and hit us along the LOC? There is that issue, I'll come back to you, sir, about how we have been able to use satellite information and jammers, but that's a different part of the question. Air Marshal, sir, yourself with your experience in earlier wars, how would you say that the Air Force's operational role has now evolved into what it is? Because we know now conflicts cannot take place with the way we had been able to enforce the 71 mandate on Pakistan, or even in the 61 war, they were for several weeks. Now timelines are limited, if at all. And secondly, the kind of force multipliers that have come to be, those force multipliers are not going to require the kind of engagement that gallant men like you went through to achieve your Veer Chakras.
Very true, Maroof. What you're saying, actually things have changed a lot. As you know, for a long time, Indian Air Force considered itself to be a tactical Air Force. But at the end of the century, we realized that we have to evolve. The Air Force has to evolve into a strategic Air Force. And that is how the weapon systems and the force multipliers that have been acquired, even though they are very small in numbers, and augmentation is certainly needed to achieve the kind of operational capabilities that we want. But the fact is that today, Indian Air Force can boast of being a strategic intercontinental Air Force with that kind of reach, especially with our mid-air refueling and so on and so forth. Just to give you an example, very recently, I think it was during one of the exercises which were conducted in 2020, where Su-30s took off from a base in Punjab, and they flew all the way across the hinterland into the Bay of Bengal and went close to, you can say, the southernmost tip of India, that I'm talking about Nicobar Islands.
Yes.
And there they hit a target, a simulated target, and came back all the way and recovered at the same base. So that is the kind of reach that we are talking about today. When you look at our transport aircraft, for example, C-17s and C-130s, we have that kind of capability today where we can say that we're truly an intercontinental Air Force. And therefore, the entire this thing has changed. We have that kind of reach. And second thing that we have now got is, I'm talking about the munitions. Because with all these aircraft, for example, Rafale that we were just discussing, it is matched with standoff weapon systems. And as Anil was talking about, these weapons are extremely accurate. So you have precision strike capability today, you have the reach, and you have all-weather capability. And that is what makes the Air Force a formidable, shall we say, tool or instrument of national power, if I may suggest. And as you know, because of its very quick reaction time, response time, and its flexibility and mobility, it is also perhaps the first weapon of choice for our national power to exist.
We saw in the Balakot strikes.
Exactly.
But Air Marshal, sir, I want to sort of move a little away, and I want to draw your opinion on how the Indian Air Force was also, without being used with its munitions on board, was a weapon of choice to influence a political strategic outcome. The case of Op Cactus in Malé, where at short notice overnight our Air Force flew in aircrafts that had to fly, even deceiving our own air traffic control in Kerala, Trivandrum, I believe. And then beyond that, they were to land on a short airstrip without landing lights. And I have been at Malé Airport's airstrip in the daylight. And sometimes you wonder if this commercial aircraft's not going to go over into the sea. So they were able to achieve that and do a quick turnaround. And the kind of strategic surprise sent ripples through not just India, but the global media. Can you highlight that a bit, sir?
Yeah, undoubtedly, at a short notice, a neighboring country, a small country, which is having a coup going on, a political upheaval, and had the trust to ask India to, invoke its power. Operation started middle of the night. The big advantage of the paratroopers or the army being co-located in Agra, they regularly training together, everything was in place. And at middle of the night, these people had to fly, they had to, it's a small island, as you said, the runway is so small, at night these guys had to drop. They have to carry some combat vehicles that had also to be landed or dropped. And supplies to be able to sustain over there. Meanwhile, the Indian Navy was also activated. They were moving, but as Air Marshal said, that the Air Force has the first mover advantage. So the entire operation within a few hours of our troops landing there had taken charge, and the coup was more or less nullified.
Yes.
And of course, a day or two later, by the time the naval ships and others moved in, I think that was a classic example of two things. One, political will and strategic reach of the Air Force, and second, the jointmanship. You know, I must mention that in the Bangladesh war, we of course had the air superiority, total control, and as Air Marshal said, the army could do blitzkrieg, high-speed run to. But two very important joint operations took place. And why I am bringing these is because in Agra, the same troops were there when Tangail airdrop took place.
Yes.
And you must remember that whether it was Chandan Singh, who is the station commander, whether it's the corps commander in Sagat Singh, they had Sagat Singh was a paratrooper. Yes. He had operated with the Air Force. He understood the importance of this kind of an operation.
In fact, he commanded the para brigade in the Goa liberation.
Yes. So therefore, when Tangail airdrop was, or the Meghna River crossing was visualized, it was visualized jointly between Sagat Singh and the Air Force Group Captain Chandan Singh. Yes. So the lessons learned from there of jointmanship was also very, very visible.
True. In fact, some would argue even that the Bangladesh war set the template for theatre commands, but that's a separate debate. And I know, I know the Air Force has its own views, but Air Marshal, sir, the question to you is, tsunami was one area where the Air Force influenced the course of events. The Nepal earthquake was another area where the Air Force made a huge impact. But more recently, which is vivid in all our memories since we are all still facing that, and how the Air Force went beyond expectations to deliver when the pandemic, with oxygen supplies, moving people, medical equipment. Can you give us an idea of what all happened?
Well, yes, as you know, the pandemic came as a surprise, and India was in a perilous situation at a given time. But it was a question of bringing the entire national effort together to be able to combat this menace. And I must say, under the very able leadership of, I would like to quote our Prime Minister, for example, where all this was put together. And as far as the armed forces are concerned, and I'd like to mention here that Army, Navy, and the Air Force, they acted in equal measure. As a matter of fact, they were giving weekly debriefs, to the Prime Minister himself in a one-to-one kind of a briefing. But as far as the Air Force was concerned, what was happening? The biggest thing, and the howlers were that the country was short of oxygen. And so many hospitals were there, the patients were dying because there was no oxygen available. And this was a mammoth task. And this is where the Air Force came in to bring in, because there was a grave shortage of oxygen tankers for that matter in the country. Right. And they were flown in from places like Germany, they were flown in from Europe, other countries in Europe, they were flown in from Singapore, and they were put together, and oxygen thereafter reached the right hospital and the patients to save their lives.
Yeah, in fact, sir, I've learned a bit over a period of time by talking to experts, including the CEO of this channel, who was involved with this emergency initiative to supply oxygen. You know, at the peak, the Indian oxygen capacity to produce through industries and others was about 7,500 tons. And we needed, at least on a normal basis after the first pandemic attack, 7,200 tons. What happened in the second wave was like a tsunami wave. I mean, you can build the number of walls you want, but the waves will go over them and come and hit you. And so therefore, we now needed capacity of about 9,500 tons, which the country was not producing. By the time it was to come from abroad, it took time. But once it came, I think the Air Force delivered. Air Marshal Chopra, sir, I'm terribly short of time, but any last one remark that you want to make before I wrap up?
Yeah, I want to highlight that technology today plays a huge role in, all kind of warfare. And there is technology can't be bought so easily. Most people don't part with it. And therefore, this indigenization thrust that the country is trying to give, especially on air assets, which are more expensive, have a higher rate of
I've got it.
Yeah. So therefore, the technology is crucial, and we need to get defense production going. We need to increase the production of LCAs, the squadrons. In the
That has to be done. In fact,
so therefore,
more and more has to be achieved indigenously, and the devil, sir, lies in the details, and not in just accepting that concept, but getting on with delivering on that. But thank you very much for both your inputs. I am that much wiser. And thanks for watching. Until our next episode, goodbye.